So hey everyone, welcome to the latest video. Decided to do a bit of a throwback, hence the title, Throwback Thursday. Just by chance we actually started this on the Thursday of 2017, the 7th of September. Assuming I've got those dates right, because everybody knows I'm not very good with dates, times, etc, etc. So I guess for two reasons really I decided to put this together. Possibly three, you could argue, but first reason being time's been a little bit short of late. I've not picked up any new kit either for a good couple of weeks, so actually coming up with new content's been a little bit of a challenge, hence some of the sort of random topics that I've really been talking about over recent ride footage. People still going mad for the Specialized Diverge ride footage. And there's going to be plenty more of that coming up during the kind of autumn and winter months, and actually got something planned for this weekend. I'll talk about that in a second. Second reason is for a little while there's somebody I've been following on Twitter who keeps going on about the same ride that they did about 2 years ago, and it was annoying me a little bit, but then I thought, sod it, if you can't beat them then join them. So this was a year ago. I have talked about this ride a few times already. I put at least one, possibly two videos together kind of around the time. But since we're getting a year on, and this was the first ride that we did as a group or with this same group, I thought it was probably worthwhile kind of marking the occasion. And also my editing skills are a little bit better than they were, and who knows, maybe there's some opportunity to actually get some footage that wasn't in the previous video or videos. So before I start talking about anything else, because inevitably that will happen, it's probably worthwhile just giving you guys a bit of a recap on what this ride actually was. So it was split over 2 days, 7th and 8th of September of last year, so 2017. Day one was around about 90 miles and day two was around about 65, and the whole point of this really was to start at a new facility in East Midlands area, actually at East Midlands Airport, and then over the course of the 2 days and the 150 or so miles was to then arrive at the other new facility, which is just on the outskirts of Heathrow Airport. So it was, I guess, a little bit of a strange route. Certainly wasn't a route that when we were first talking about trying to organise this ride ourselves that we would have come up with, but actually in trying to take in, I guess, some of the sort of sponsorship venues and clubs and all that kind of thing en route, and also being able to, I guess, split it into two manageable portions. Yeah, this was the route that we came up with. So we kind of headed southwest, southeast. Yeah, southeast it was to begin, and then on day two, then kind of headed southwest. Day one, which is the footage that you guys are seeing at the minute, there was a lot more blue sky. There was, in fact, hardly a cloud in the sky at the start of the day. Day two started out very chilly, pretty miserable, and yeah, just kind of got worse really as the day went on. So there was kind of the middle 20 miles on day two, which was pretty horrific, and it was also probably the toughest 20 miles of day two as well. So it was very hilly, which really just added to the challenge, I guess. But it's one of those things that at the time you're kind of hating it, but then it's I guess a bit like the camping trips that you had as a kid. So yeah, at the time you're hating it and you're thinking, oh, I just want to go home, but then you look back on it and actually you're ultimately pleased that you did it. So as this being the first ride that we did as a group, I wouldn't kind of go as far to say I've made friends for life, but I've certainly got to know a different group of people that had I have not done it, I probably would never have spoken to or even spent any time with. So from that perspective, it was fantastic. It really was a great 2 days, not only because it was the first, but also, as I say, because there's new people there as well. And a lot of those faces then kind of made the transition over to the second ride that we did just a little bit earlier this year. So who knows, I might actually keep up with kind of doing these throwbacks there's only 2 of these kind of group rides that we've done, but I've plenty of other footage that I've kind of been recording and storing up now for the last couple of years. So if there is anything of interest, who knows, it might even just be an opportunity to actually talk about kind of where I was at that particular time, versus where I am now, both the positives and the negatives and things that I've learned, just as any opportunity really to get a video out there and have a bit of a ramble. So right at the start I did mention that potentially there's a third reason as well for kind of going back through this footage at least, and that is I would still really like to actually have a crack at doing this in one day, yeah, it's one of those things really, you kind of remember all of the highs. As I was saying, it's a bit like the camping trip. So yeah, you only kind of remember the highs, and so actually by having this footage and kind of going back over it, in reality I'm probably going to cut this down to kind of 10 minutes, certainly around that area, but footage wise I've got about 2.5 hours, so I have got a large chunk of the route, especially kind of the more challenging parts on both day 1 and day 2. So yeah, I would like to have a serious crack at doing this in one day. It's going to come in around about the 150 mark. I guess unlike the longest ride that I've done, there is a fair amount of elevation in it. I guess if you take it across the whole 150, it's actually not too bad, but the longest ride that I've done was around about the 120 mark, and it, to be honest, was probably one of the easiest rides that I've ever done, for the simple fact that the stops were built in on a fairly consistent basis, probably around about the 30 or 40 mile mark off the top of my head. It was pan flat and there was practically a tailwind for the whole day. So who knows, you know, in planning this I might actually get lucky. I might end up with a tailwind again for the whole 150. It's unlikely, but you never know with things like that, and that's kind of part of the challenge, I guess, in trying to plan something like this. You know, you have to just be prepared for kind of every eventuality really, including not only the wind but obviously also the wet weather as well. So in kind of putting it out there very low key in terms of what I was thinking of doing, there are a couple of people who have expressed a desire to actually have a crack at doing it as well. I think given the distance and kind of the pace that we'd need to go at, and I did touch on this actually in an earlier video as well, then it kind of feels like June of 2019 is probably the right time to do it, for the simple fact that it's around about the 21st, or could even be the 21st, that we actually get the longest day, probably what, 14-15 hours of daylight. So I think I'm going to try and plan it for around about that time, probably actually do something a little bit more serious with it. Unlike this ride and the ride that we did over to Belgium, it's going to be unsupported, so we're going to need to put a little bit of extra planning in. But as we start moving into the sort of autumn and winter period, really start to think about kind of the goals and the challenges for next year, I think I'm seriously going to consider actually doing this ride, put a little bit more into potentially who's interested in doing it, maybe planning the stops. I think route wise there's nothing really to kind of plan with that, although there was certain parts of it that were more challenging than others. I don't really see any reason to kind of deviate from that particular route, and actually having done it kind of over the 2 days and done it supported, it's logical really to kind of follow the same route, because then at least, you know, you've kind of got experience and you know where the challenging parts are coming up. So yeah, I guess we'll kind of use those 2 days as a little bit of a recce really. Yeah, cheating a tad to some of you sort of really hardcore sort of explorer riders out there, but it's something that will be new to me at least. That distance, the potential challenges that it will throw up, so actually having kind of put eyes on the route beforehand, I think will pay dividends in the long run. So we'll wrap things up. For people watching this footage for the first time, I hope you enjoy it. People watching for the second, I hope it was another opportunity to hear me ramble on, give you a bit of insight, and also to talk about some of the things that I'm thinking about doing for next year. So big thumbs up, subscribe if you would like to see more, and thank you very much for watching.